can really do this. You can make your space better. You can open up your mind to doing the things you want to do. And one of the biggest areas is the whole distractions. Can you close your door and say no thank you? Can you shut off your phone? Can you know what you want to do, so why would you let other people and other ideas grab your most important resource, which is your time? Because once you give that away, you can't focus on what's truly important to you.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 125 of the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In this episode, I have a chat with Janice Savage, the Savvy Concierge. Janice is a professional organizer and lifestyle manager. She alleviates the stress and the feeling of being overwhelmed that her busy clientele experience. Janice has taken the strategies and tips she developed first by raising 4 kids and then by working one-on-one with her clientele to introduce savvy principles to simplify your life. Savvy Concierge strategies enable work-life balance, which translates into more personal time and less stress. And you'll find my interview with Janice turns into a bit of an intervention for me in my messy workspace. I particularly love how Janice was right into jumping into helping me with organizing me and my workspace and my habits. And I'm sure that you'll find that our conversation is helpful to you in ideas for streamlining your work habits, your workspace, and the underlying stress that can come from being overwhelmed when it's out of control. And that's coming up later in the episode. I'm going to read some comments and do a personal update, but first, let's hear a word from this episode's sponsor, Findaway Voices. This is breaking news in the Findaway Voices world. I'm recording this on the afternoon of Thursday, March 26th, and Findaway Voices just announced through Twitter that they have a special opportunity to help libraries, but the deadline for submissions is tight. Sunday night, i.e. Sunday, March 29th. 2020. So if you want to get in on this, maybe after you listen to this, pause, go do it, and then come back to the podcast. You want to offer your title up to libraries for free in the cost per checkout model? It's going to be happening from March 30th to April 30th, 2020 through Findaway Voices. Check out the show notes at starkreflections.ca for episode 125, or search for the Findaway Voices Twitter feed to find the link. It was posted around 3 p.m. Eastern on March 26, 2020. Findaway suggests that you submit a first-in-series or any high-quality standalone book, which will be offered free to libraries through the CPC, which is known as the cost per checkout or cost per circulation loan option. One-on-one unit sales will still be regular price. Now, there are a limited number of spots for this promotion. Submitting does not guarantee participation, and you'll only receive a notification if your title is accepted. If your title is not accepted, it will continue being offered to Findaway Voices library partners under the normal cost per checkout rates as defined in Schedule C of your distribution agreement. Why and how could this work? Well, as libraries see huge spikes in patrons accessing their digital catalogs due to many physical locations being closed, having a collection of free titles lets libraries continue offering digital downloads even as daily, weekly, monthly budget limits kick in for the paid titles. It helps libraries today and could help you get more titles into the library market where you can potentially earn more revenue in the near future. This is just one of many opportunities you get when you publish your audiobooks through Findaway Voices to a global network of over 43 retail and library channels. And you can check out more about Findaway Voices over at starkreflections.ca/Findaway. And jumping into the comments from recent episodes, for episode 124, Lindsay Flanagan on working with an editor, Chad Boyer said, I think the key thing to remember about editing is that it is always good to have someone who is a professional check over your work before you sell it. Pretty much every consumer project has a quality assurance check that makes sure that the product put out is the highest quality that can be done in the time given. Books are no different. Whether it's an editor assigned to you by a publisher or one you hire for self-publishing, the editor is there to make sure the brand that is you puts out the best product you can in the time given. I say in the time given because at some point you've got to release the book. Otherwise, you're just polishing a stone into oblivion trying to make it perfect. Thanks again for a great podcast. Looking forward to the next. Well, thank you for that comment, Chad. Very eloquent way to express the importance and value of you and your author brand by working with a professional editor and getting that best work out there, but not polishing it for 10 years and never releasing it and making it insubstantial. Thanks for that. Other comments, episode 123, which was a 3-story method with Thorn and Zach Bohannon. Katie Mack offered a writing hack in her comment. Now, here's Katie Mack's writing hack. As a writer with a day job, I was in despair. No matter what I did in my few hours set aside for writing, I felt like I should be doing something else. Eventually, I broke the work of writing into 4 parts: research, first draft, rewrites, marketing. And every month I put my main focus on one of the parts. Main focus, she emphasizes, not exclusive. I'm not obsessed. This means I cycle through all the parts 3 times in a year, and when I'm torn between tasks, I can put some aside, knowing I'm not abandoning them. Their turns will come up later. P.S. Thanks for the intro to Zach and Jay's 3-story method. Definitely worth a deeper look. And thank you for that comment, Kathy. Excellent ideas, especially when you're trying to balance things. What I love about it is you very clearly define the different roles and tasks you have to play as an author, and then you're putting them on focus. You're scheduling them. You put them in the calendar. That's probably something that our guest Janice from this episode probably would be. She would work with someone like you for a process like that and say, okay, how can we make sure that you can stick to this process because that's what works for you. So thank you for that, Kathy. And Maddie Dalrymple also offered a hack on that episode. She said, another great episode. I especially enjoyed Jay and Zach's commitment to getting together in person in support of their collaborations. My way/hack, ironically, is for online collaboration. I recently discovered that Zoom has a setting called Touch Up My Appearance. I kid you not, it works too. Well, thank you so much, Maddie, for that hack. I'm going to have to check out that Touch Up My Appearance. Will it give me hair? But thank you for that. So, Kathy and Maddie, you have been entered in a chance to win a print copy of the 3-story method by Jay and Zach, as well as a print copy of the workbook. And it's not too late for you to leave your own hack or way. This is in honor of a segment that Jay and Zach have on their own career author podcast that I love. So I wanted to hear some ways or hacks from you guys. And thank you guys for sharing your ways and hacks. By entering, you get a chance to win in a random draw. And all the patrons of the podcast who support this podcast over at patreon.com/starkreflections are automatically entered in to win a second copy of the book. And one of those copies comes courtesy of Jay and Zach. The other one comes courtesy of me and my awesome patrons who support the podcast. Now, patrons who support the podcast for $1 a month are entered with 1 chance to win. Patrons who sponsor the podcast for $3 a month are entered with 2 chances to win. And patrons who sponsor the podcast for $5 a month are entered with 3 chances to win. So many ways to win, and I love the hacks. I'm going to want to continue something like this because I love reading them myself and learning them as well as sharing it with listeners. Now, speaking of Jay and Zach, this kind of leads into my personal update. It was just announced within the last 24 hours that the Career Author Summit in Nashville, which Jay and Zach and Jim Kukral are operating, I was supposed to be a speaker at it in May. It has been modified from an in-person event and is being changed into a virtual conference. So I'm looking forward to continuing to do that with the event. It's for obvious reasons. There's the isolation and the quarantines happening and the canceled travel plans with COVID-19. But I love the fact that they're working hard to provide value, even though it seems that they're going to be on the hook with the hotel for a significant amount of money. So I want to do everything that I can to support the attendees who are planning on still attending it, even though it'll be virtually. And I'm probably going to be offering up some special additional bonuses for those who attend. Normally, when I'm at a conference like that, I hang out at the bar, I can buy people drinks, I can spend time with them, do one-on-one chats. So I'm going to do everything I can for that weekend in May for the Career Author Summit to be even more available and accessible so that people can take advantage of that. No, won't be an in-person thing, but they'll still make it amazing. I have a lot of faith in Jay and Zach and Jim, and I know they're going to pull it off, and I'm looking forward to supporting them. In other personal updates, I was honored to be a guest on the Rebel Author podcast with Sacha Black, and I appear in episode 21 of that, and we talk about my book, An Author's Guide to Working with Libraries and Bookstores, and I share tips specifically about working with libraries. Now, this podcast from Sacha is a motivational show for all creatives out there with an inner rebel. You can listen for interviews, industry news, tips, tricks, and tools to help you take your creative business to the next level. I quite like this podcast. No, I adore this podcast. Sacha is great. She is spirited and fun, creative, and progressive in her approach. And you know what I really love? I love the sneaky, badass attitude that she injects that gives her podcast a unique flair. She is a fantastic interviewer, and she has really cool segments in each episode where she shares something badass or rebel from her listeners. Now, you might recognize Sacha as the author of the book 3 Steps to Evil, How to Craft Superbad Villains, and 10 Steps to Hero, How to Craft a Kick-Ass Protagonist. And I've been looking forward to working with Sacha to have her on this podcast to talk about her forthcoming new book project. So that's something you can look forward to in future episodes. But in the meantime, if you want to listen to Sacha and you want more of me, go check out the Rebel Author Podcast, episode 21. Well, that's it for the personal updates and the introductory babble of this episode. Let's get right into the conversation with Janice, the savvy concierge. Janice, thanks for hanging out with me today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here and speak with you.
So I'm really eager to learn a little bit more about you and about Savvy Concierge. Where did this all come together?
So I'm a Torontonian, and I moved back to Toronto with my family about 8 years ago. And I was at the point where, what should I do? You know, my youngest kids were in high school, and I had a lot of time. And I loved being in a position that I could help other people. And someone approached me to do some organizing, and someone approached me to do some items on their to-do list. And it just organically grew on its own into the business it is today. And I love being part of people's journey where I can help them accomplish their goals.
So have you always been an organizer, a planner? Has that been the role you've played for a long time?
Yes. So I have 4 kids, and we lived overseas at one point. We lived in Montreal, and we moved around there. So I was always on top of things, organized. I always had a number of items, balls in the air, if you will. Right. And through that, I developed a keen sense of prioritizing and really listening to what is important and listening to what people aren't saying, because that also lets us know what's important. Right. And helping accomplish the goals of whether it's my family, whether it was my husband, whether it was my children, whether it was through the schools, being that kind of person. And then now it's such a great opportunity for me to be able to do something like that professionally.
That's cool. Now, I noticed that you work with clients for their business. You work with personal. What's the range? You seem to work with a lot of different types of people for what you offer and the help that you help them with.
So I love working with people in their residence to make their homes more functional so that they can experience less stress, find what they need, move about their life, and accomplish what they want to do. And that translates many times as them being invited into their businesses, where maybe there's a lack of flow, they're disorganized, or their staff is disorganized in finding things, getting things done in a timely, efficient manner. And that's why someone like me can come in and sort of troubleshoot it and focus. And that's, like I said, I just love being part of the journey and helping people achieve what they want to achieve, their personal goals.
So writers often have home offices, or they set up a space that is where they're meant to do their creative stuff and their business stuff. Is there anything that you've seen when working with clients in terms of what's something to consider when you first are setting up a work at home space? Is there anything that writers can apply from that?
So I think if we want to think about this space, I would ask if we could take 2 steps back first.
Okay.
And I would say, before we even look at someone's space, I would ask you, let's look at their values. Is being a published writer, being an author, a real value for someone? Because if it is, then their goals are going to be in line with their values. So maybe their goal is they want to have an ebook out once a month, every 6 months. Are they going to have a video book with it? So if we know that being a writer is one of your top values, and we know what your goals look like, then we can look at what your action plan is. And then I can look at it and say, okay, where are you writing? Is this a full-time job? Is this something that you sit down at 9:30 at night after a full day and family obligations? So what space are we looking at? Are we looking at a coffee shop table? Are we looking at the dining room table? Or do you have a real office? And I don't say real in a negative sense, but sometimes we need a door so that we can close the door and close out all distractions. So that's sort of the process. I need to ask those background questions, because if you tell me, well, writing's kind of important, but you've got 7 other things that are really important, then you know what? That's not really a serious goal. So you're not going to make it a serious endeavor in your life. So are you really going to have a great space to do that?
Cool.
But I know that you are that person. You take that very seriously. This is one of your top values. So I would say then we need to have a place where you can do your work. So tell me about your workspace.
This feels like a free consultation for Mark, actually.
Well, I love my job, and if I can help you at the same time, let's do it.
All right, let's do an on the spot thing. So my workspace here, this used to be a spare bedroom. I've got a sit down desk. I've got a stand up desk attached to it. I've got bookshelves there that aren't just for the visual. They make me feel good. Being surrounded by books has always been something it's part of who I am. But they also serve an additional function. Recording audiobooks and recording podcasts, they help muffle the sound, and they create a better sound space as well. I do some of my writing sitting down, some of my writing standing up, and I kind of alternate throughout the day just because I'm here most of the time. I have 4 animals often sharing the room with me, 2 dogs and 2 cats that kind of come and go all day. And I tend to do all my work, whether it's creative work and business, all on the laptop I'm using right now, but also when I have a wireless mouse and keyboard, and I just have a monitor that I connect. Laptop just stays where it is. But I do the majority of my work when I'm not traveling right here in this space. Which is great. I've got a nice window. It looks as you can see, the light is coming in.
Right. Mm-hmm.
In the afternoon, I look down on the main street of our house, and ever since I got the stand-up desk, which was maybe about 7 months ago, ever since I got the stand-up desk, I feel a lot more in tune with my neighborhood. Whereas before, when I was just seated, I had no idea all of the wonderful activity that was going on. Now it distracts me, but it also fulfills the that sort of extroverted introvert in me. It makes me feel like I'm connected to the neighborhood while I'm still in my little enclosed workspace.
Very interesting. There was a lot of information there, a lot. But you know what? I've learned a lot. I learned some of the things that you like. I learned some of the things that maybe wouldn't work for you. So one of the things, if we just think about clutter for a second,
Right.
what does clutter do to us? Well, clutter causes a lot of right. I'm just looking at you, took a deep breath,
You don't want to see what's all over my desks.
Right. Oh no, I really do, Mark. I really do. But clutter makes us stressed. Clutter takes away our focus. It makes it that we're not doing the things that we're supposed to be doing. And I think for a writer, the biggest challenge then having clutter in our minds and physically is that it takes away from the creative process. How can you be creative and do what you need to do when you're disorganized in your mind, you're disorganized with your time, and you're disorganized with your space? So those three areas, space, mind, and your physical desk or table, whatever it is, so critical to being organized. And it starts with something as simple as, what do you like about your space? Well, you told me you like that there's a window, you have a desk, you can sit, you can stand, you like being surrounded with books. These are fantastic things. And then we would need to look at your desk and say, well, what are those distractions? What is taking away from what you need to get done? Because we know your values, we know your goals, so then we've got to get some action together to make sure that you can accomplish what you need. So I'm not going to force you to show me your desk. We can do that privately. But we can talk about, what are the kinds of things that you do need on your desk? Well, on your desk, you need to have, or let me reframe and say, when you walk around whether it's a dining room table or the coffee shop, you sort of look at your place and you say, well, what's working here? Well, you told me some of the things that are working for you. And then I would say, well, what's not working for you? Is it distractions? Maybe you need a door, because maybe you need to be able to close that door and say, it's quiet time, I'm working. It's okay to close the door and say, no, thank you, I'm not available. Are you able to close off your phone and your emails and all these things that cause distraction? So if we look at all that, then we're walking around our desk and we're saying, what's on our desk? We should only have what we need on our desk to do our work, right? Otherwise, it's distracting. How many coffee mugs and how much material? Well, if you're doing some research, then you do need some books. And I love that you love books, and I'm looking at your screen and I see books. That's great. For me, if I had that would be very distracting. That wouldn't be a good way for me to work. You know what? When I'm sitting in my office, what I see, the corner of my eye, I can see my yoga mat. That's not distracting for me. That's really good for me. But for someone else, that would be awful. So it's beginning just what's on your plate. What do you see that works for you? So you need your computer. You need maybe some research material. Maybe you need a pen and paper and a pad. What do you need? Those are the things. Your gym bag with your dirty clothes don't need to be in your office.
Right.
So what does that begin to look like for you? And you just showed me your paper and your pen.
Because I'm interviewing you, so I have to take notes as we're talking.
You're great, Mark. That's great. So, but that's the beginning of the process, right? What works, what doesn't? What are in your drawers? If you need a supply and you open your drawers, are they filled with items that don't belong in an office?
Right.
Well, maybe they are. And if you're on your dining room table or somewhere else, well, maybe we need a little box or something that you can put everything in at the end of your work session. So what does that look like? I know people that love to work at a coffee shop. Well, I couldn't do that. I need my stuff set up. And someone else would say, no, the noise, the comings and goings, that works great. So it's very personalized what's going to work for you to achieve the kind of success that you're looking for.
Excellent. I love that. Thank you. That is awesome. It's given me given me more motivation to tidy up some of the things. So, for example, I'll give you an example of some of the mess. I do a lot of meetings from home. I do work from home, and I consult as well as write. So my time is divided half and half. And so a lot of times I have notes with, these are notes for our interview and questions I plan on asking you, or things you said that make me think I should double check this or double check that.
Of course.
But then I have notes from this morning's meeting with a client that I was working at, and I have notes from a story I was working on earlier. And there, you would probably smack me in the back of the head to see that I have them just scattered across my desk. I haven't actually filed them anywhere or put them anywhere properly yet. And as you're right, that becomes a distraction.
Right. It becomes a huge distraction. So what works for you? Do you like file folders? Do you when you think about things, like I'll tell you, in my little office, I have, file folders. I love that. I love when I'm working with a client, I can pull one folder out and it has all the information I have. And then when I'm finished working with them, their file is put somewhere else because it's not immediate. So
right.
How do you work? Because your desk needs to be clean, because what happens if I would call you and say, Mark, I've got to talk to you about that interview. Are you going to be scrambling? Well, what interview? When? Where? Who's Janice, by the way? Like, do you know what I mean?
You know me so well.
It's human nature. So it's how can we make your system work for you? It's not about a system that's out there that you're going to bring into your home. It's how does Mark think? Well, you like things maybe by date, maybe it's by name, maybe it's alphabetical. I don't know you well enough yet to know what works for you, or maybe it's project based. So by knowing that, then I would say that, and it depends on, some of your projects may be long term, so you don't need one file folder, you may need a whole bunch. So what's involved with that? We'd have to talk about what you're working on, but I would say it can be done very simply. One folder, you can have all your, interviews for the month. And then well, this was March. So when someone says to you something about it, you're not scrambling. You have a place for it. Everything has a home. But the home makes sense to you, Mark, because it's where you need to find your things. It's not about me, or it's not about anyone else's system. It's for you.
Excellent. Well, thank you. That is awesome. There's some good things for me to consider and think about. I want to go back. To, so you had mentioned when we were talking earlier that you had 5 savvy action principles, and specifically how they could apply to writers like me.
Okay, so we started talking about them a little bit. So the first one is to identify the values of your life.
Okay.
Sort of big picture, what do you value, Mark? And you don't have to answer me now. You can think about it. What is really important to you? Is it, for some people, it's just making money. For some people, they want to be traveling all the time. For some people, it's being a published author. For me, it's being, one of the best organizers there are. So, everybody has, what's your goal? What moves you? Okay. And then you need to look at, the second one is goal setting. Well, what are your goals? Long term, short term, for this particular value. So we're talking about being a published author. So what kind of goals goal setting. What kind of time frame are you looking at? And that's a very personal question. For someone, it may be, if I get one thing published this year, I'm a success. And that's great. And for someone like you may say, well, that wouldn't work for you. You need to know you're publishing once a month and you've got an ebook out the same time every month. This is critical for the kind of author that you are. So those are the first steps. So where do you place yourself on that continuum? And then, of course, then we need to look at the action. What are you going to do to accomplish those goals? Where are you going to write? How are you going to write? Because let's be honest, not everybody is doing this as their full-time job. And if you're doing it at night after family responsibilities, what does that look like? Realistically, what does that look like? So there's an action plan. And within the action plan is the practicality of your desk, your time frame. And then something that we haven't talked about yet, which I think you would agree is so important, is your mindset.
Right.
Are you set for success? And what I like to say is the non-perfection of life. If you're waiting for and I say you, I don't mean you personally.
I know.
Are we waiting for the perfect time to sit down and write, or the perfect idea? Well, it doesn't exist. So you've got an hour, let's sit down, let's do it, we'll do our best, and you can revisit it later. But what's your mindset for your own success? And the last tip, which to me really pulls all of this together, is what I call habits for success. Routine builds success. Routine and habits will launch you to the place you need to go, because when you're focused on the right thing at the right time for you, it creates a momentum, and then you can move along with that momentum. But your habits have to be in place, and good habits, work habits, lifestyle habits, so that are you eating properly, sleeping properly, writing to the best of your ability? These are all the habits. So are you launching yourself for success? Mark, tell me about some of your work habits. What does that look like for you? What is a day? Because remember, many times with our habits, we're not even thinking, when we get up, do we make our beds? Well, you know what? You want to start a successful day, accomplish something immediately. Get up, make your bed. Did you clean up from breakfast? Because you don't want clutter. You don't want all this stuff hanging around. And then you move from one success to another. And that's how you build your life, your career, all your responsibilities. So those would be the kinds of things that I would highly encourage. And I would say for a writer, like, sit down and map out what your success looks like. And it's not just being published, in 6 months. What does your day look like? Because if you're not giving the proper time to what you feel is your number one priority, and how are you going to become a published author? If it's always down at number 7, well, you're not giving yourself the time, the energy to do what you want to do.
One of the things that is very obvious, it comes through very clearly, is your passion for helping, your passion for asking questions and probing and getting to the bottom of the values, of the priorities, of the goals with your clients. That seems to be critical for the work that you do, right?
Yes, it's very important, because how can I help you be organized if I don't know what you need to be organized for?
Right.
If someone brings me into their home to organize their kitchen and they've got, a housekeeper and 5 kids, well, that's very different than a single man in an apartment.
Right.
And that's the lesson that I can bring to everything, to writers, to homes, to professionals. It's listening to what people need, and really, so for someone like a writer, it's what do you want? You want to be published? When do you want to be published? Where do you want to be published? How are we going to get it? So let's make sure your work environment, your life environment is set for success. Because then it's all up to you, right? When you don't have the distractions of what's physically around you and what's in your head, all those distractions, then you can focus, hyper focus on what you want. But when your physical environment is a mess and you haven't even really thought about the kind of writer you want to be, well, how can you be anything?
Right. Now you're based out of Toronto, Ontario.
Right. I'm in the GTA.
And you do meet in person with clients, but are you able to do virtual consultations with folks?
So, with what's going on now with the virus and all that kind of stuff, that has really come to the forefront. Unfortunately or fortunately, I'm not sure anymore. But yes, so one thing I do offer is a complimentary consult where I enjoy meeting people in their homes or offices or talking to them. And then at this point, I can see what I do begin to segue into some kind of virtual exchange.
Right.
But it would have to work for the person, and it would have to be something that people would be comfortable with. But for sure, to talk to someone like we are now and look at someone's space and just give them the impetus that they can really do it.
Right.
Because you can really do this. You can make your space better. You can open up your mind to doing the things you want to do. It's giving yourself permission to sit down and actually do it. And one of the biggest areas is that we touched on a little bit is the whole distractions. Can you close your door and say no thank you? Can you shut off your phone? Can you know what you want to do, so why would you let other people and other ideas grab your most important resource, which is your time. Because once you give that away, you can't focus on what's truly important to you. And of course, I'm not talking about being involved in your community and helping people and all that kind of thing. I'm talking about when we talk about what are our values, what you want to accomplish. You want to be that published author. You want to have 6 ebooks a year and 6 videos. And I know from watching your podcast, and you want them to go out at the same time, then you've got a plan. You've got to make sure that that's the priority for you. So how are we going to do that? And that means closing your door at times to other people and situations and opportunities, because you're focusing on what you feel is number one for you.
Excellent. Thank you. Now, I have heard you say that small changes can have a huge impact. Let's dig into that a little bit more.
Sure. So I have something that I call 6 savvy achievement tips. And really, those are, in a way, they're tiny, tiny pieces, but when we think big picture, they're huge. So the first recommendation, and I recommend it to everyone, is have an accountability partner. Have someone that will be brutally honest with you. So Mark, when you hit your deadlines and you're doing great, that person is the first one to pat you on the back. Go, Mark, go, amazing. And at the same time, when you're slouching and you're down or you missed a deadline or whatever it is, like, hey, Mark, what happened? Or hey, Janice, what happened? Legitimate or not, what's going on? To have that is the biggest gift. So that to me would be one of the pieces that I would say you want to grow your business. You need someone that you are accountable to and for. The next one is, I call it SNAP. It's SNAP. It's Sunday night plan. The Sunday night plan is the most successful piece of my week. Now, whether you do it Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, or Sunday night, it's done on Sunday, where it's almost like a brain dump, where I have a book and every single thing is written down in that book that needs to be done for the whole week. So I'm less stressed. I'm definitely not nervous. There's no anxiety. There's no little pieces of paper here and there. And the book stays on my desk. Now, maybe the book would be in your drawer. Maybe the book would be in someone's briefcase. But you know where that book is all the time because it's so important. Everything gets written down, and then it gets, translated or funneled along into the week, depending what needs to be done on what day. And what's interesting and what I found is, I've noticed for myself is sometimes I look back and I say, oh, that was on, I put that item on that Sunday. Oh, and it's reappeared on the following Sunday. Oh, it's there on the following Sunday. And I'm like, why is it I'm not getting that done? So it causes me to stand back and look, is that really a priority? Is that really something I need to do? And if it is, why am I avoiding it? And then I'm going to talk to my accountability partner and say, I'm not getting things done. But it's an interesting way to de-stress, to know that everything is written down. And I know a lot of people love to put it on the computer. I'm old-fashioned in a certain way. I find writing it down gives me the power and control so that I see it, I feel it, and I can move on. So that is my next tip for people. The following one is distractions. And we touched on this a little bit. Are you okay to close the door and say no, thank you? Are you okay to turn off your phone? I have clients where we've encouraged them, you answer your emails at 8:30 in the morning, noon, and at 3:30. And you let your team know, you let people know. You're not available all day, all the time. Now, of course, if you're in the middle of something, that's a different situation. But otherwise, Mark, during the day, you're doing what your number one priorities are, whether it's the actual writing or the business part of being published, or maybe you're taking that day off and you're doing some kind of research out of your office. But you're not letting the distractions take over your life. We talked a little bit already about your desk, your office, what that can look like. And I can't stress enough, and I'm not going to ask you to show me what your floor looks like, Mark. What does the floor look like? Can you come in and Do you have to tippy-toe around piles? And I'm not saying that to you, but I've had it where, I walk in and I'm zigzagging and I'm afraid I'm going to tip something over. It is so refreshing to walk up to your desk, sit down, and everything's ready. Whether you're sitting at your desk at 8:45 a.m. or 8:45 p.m., your desk and your things are ready. So that's the next point. The fifth savvy tip here is I encourage people to hire other people to do things for you. You want an excellent website? Hire someone. You want someone to clean your home? Hire someone. You need to be busy with writing, with focusing, with speaking to a person like Mark, with maybe you need a publisher, maybe you've got all these kinds of things to build your career. You don't need to be busy doing other things. And what you've got to be busy with is the things that you do really well. You don't need to be building a website. Hire someone to do that for you because it's going to take your time, energy, and resources. So I encourage that. And the last one maybe we've talked about it a tad is emails. I don't know what your email box looks like, but my inbox, you're laughing. You're laughing. What does your inbox look like? And you don't have to show it to me. But you know what? If that's a source of stress and you've got a lot of people that you're dialoguing with, well, then it needs to be organized or you're going to lose items just because there's so many things. So I know for me, I have right away, is it something that needs action? Because then I'm putting it's not staying in my inbox, into my to-dos because it's a big deal for me to put something in my to-do box. Maybe I don't want to get rid of it. Maybe it belongs in trash, but I have a file marked not trash. Maybe it should go in the trash, but I'm not ready to say goodbye to it yet, so I stick it there. And you know what that does for me? Takes away all my stress. I know I still have it. So what is going to work for each person depending on their situation? But I tell you, when I look at my inbox, I'm not stressed and I'm not overwhelmed. And that's something that everyone can experience. Even if it means just moving it out and saying, you know what, at 2 o'clock today, I'm going to sit down for half an hour and go through everything in my to-do box because my inbox is cleaned out. So those are the kinds of things that I like to, share with people. I would also encourage you, get a plant for your office. It helps clean the air, puts a smile on your face. All these kinds of things, like what works for you. You see, I see you're smiling at me when I said that.
I'm looking at the 2 plants I have.
Great. So my plant is actually downstairs. I brought it into the kitchen because it's having some life support issues. So I brought it down where it's a little bit sunnier right now. But so what does that look like? So those are the kinds of tips that I would begin to discuss with people.
Oh, that's fantastic. So much food for thought, so many notes that I've taken here. And I know when I listen back,
great.
I know when I listen back to this, I need to put a bit of an action plan into place. So for my listeners, can you please let them know where they can find out more about you and more about Savvy Concierge?
So the best way to reach me is through my website, savvyconcierge.ca. And right now I have a tip, 7 savvy steps to organize your kitchen. And if you can download that, or you can, if you'd like the one about office organizing, you can just reach out to me through the website and I can send that off to you. Not a problem. It would be my pleasure.
Awesome. Well, Janice, thank you so much for taking the time to actually help organize me, get me inspired for that, and sharing lots of fantastic tips for my listeners.
Thank you, Mark. It was really my pleasure. Have a great afternoon.
One of the things that Janice said, and this was fascinating. I was listening back to it. I was laughing the way I was laughing when she was doing the intervention, because there's so much value. There's so many things that she talks about that are so critical in terms of the clutter and how the cluttered mind, the cluttered workspace, cluttered physical environment, how it all impacts one another. But the other thing that impacts is the importance of habits and routines for success. And I'm going to take it down to something that we learned through NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, is if you want to get 50,000 words written, you make a plan, you set a course to write 1,666 words per day, and at the end of the month, you have 50,000. Not only does it do it in small chunks of commitment or time, but it shows you that just doing a little bit of something in a particular way, creating a habit, creating a routine, creating a pattern for success, getting yourself into that in little increments even, can help you create a larger path or a larger road to success. I'm going to go back to some tropes or things that we've heard about, but think about that in your role as a writer, is that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And I'm going to pause for a second and think about that song by the Proclaimers, I will walk 500 miles and I will walk 500 more. But each of those walks begins with a single purposeful step. Each habit that you form, each activity that you put in schedule and you prioritize over other things gets you one step closer to your goals. So hopefully that gives you something to think about and reflect on at the end of this podcast. Again, this is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. You're listening to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. Thank you so much for joining me here in this episode. If you found this episode helpful, please feel free to share it with a friend that you think would find value in it. You can also feel free to leave a review of the Stark Reflections podcast on the podcatcher of your choice. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening and for sharing, or for reviewing, or for just being there and listening and enjoying, because I kind of love that too. So thanks for listening. Until next week and next episode, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.